Welcome back. This is Unfiltered. I'm Mike Ginn. My guest this week, you might know him from UFC. You might know him from Brave. He's a mixed martial artist, originally out of Chicago, now fighting for American Top Team now, right? Or
No,
fighting in
actually,
two different places.
I train and live with Dean Thomas full time, and I train at the Goat Shed, American Combat Gym,
So you're
Fusion
all over the place.
XL. Dude, I go everywhere. I go to Bahrain to train with Cage MMA. I mean, I'm a gym hopper, but that's the fun thing that I don't have to be exclusive, and everyone's cool with me.
All right. Well, of course, I'm talking about Shorty Torres, Jose Shorty Torres. He's been fighting now, I believe, professionally now for almost 6 years now, right?
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Fought in the UFC for a little bit, kind of in the early days of the flyweight division. I know at one point you were quoted as saying the flyweight division was about to die after DJ got traded over to one. Henry Cejudo took the title and went up to bantamweight. Now that division is thriving, especially with Moreno and Figueiredo having their trilogy. You got Alex Pantoja and all these people coming in. Has there been any talk of bringing you back to the UFC?
So the funny thing is, I was like the fun size Francis Ngannou. I was like, hey man, I think we're gonna get cut because of this, because of that. I pointed out all the things I accidentally, in a sense, exploited the UFC and what their plans were. Given I didn't know, it was just an assumption. Sadly, I ended up being spot on, and because of that, I was punished. I was the first one to be cut, even after taking two last minute fights with ultimatums by the UFC. And it's like, man, I'm really being mistreated here. And then I say something while Kobe can say Dana's this, Dana's that, and all these other people can talk trash. But I said something about the business, and they're like, "Yeah, get out of here." So regardless of what my resume was, which really, really sucks. So that was definitely a struggle. But these fighters coming up, like Moreno, I've trained with him. All these other guys, Eric Shelton, sadly that was cut. All the guys that were tough, that are still in the UFC, man, I've trained with most of them, and they've all been phenomenal fighters, and they've always been phenomenal fighters. But now with this Brandon Moreno Figueiredo now probably going to a quadruple fight, which is awesome. I wouldn't really, I wouldn't say it's thriving. It's just now finally has the attention it deserves. Like it's always been that. Like all these fights. I mean, you watch any of DJ's championship fights, like those have been back and forth. Look at the
lighter division's always been some of the most exciting to watch. One, because you don't always get a lot of the knockouts. Usually they're going 3 to 5 rounds of just nonstop action. DJ eventually started finishing people just because people said he couldn't. So then he just proved people wrong. Started doing like flying arm bars and all kinds of crazy stuff.
And people were saying he's not exciting, but like you said, he's doing flying arm bars. He had I think the world record for the latest submission. I think it was literally 459 of the 5th round against Kyoji Horiguchi with an arm bar. So it's like this guy's exciting, but he wasn't promoted. And with the UFC, if they don't promote you, no one knows you. But they can promote Sage Northcutt, a guy who was literally just another kid coming up, and nothing against him, but they promoted that. They promoted the heck out of him, and everyone's like, Sage Northcutt's gonna kill everyone, and it's just like, no, man. Like you got other people looking.
Now he's begging for a fight and one,
So if the UFC promotes you, you're gonna be highlighted. And with the Brandon Moreno fight, luckily Figueiredo was that guy that even though he wasn't an American, he wasn't an English speaker at the time, because I know he's practicing his English right now. It's hard to promote guys who are international that don't speak, English. English right now is the most powerful language in the world. So when you got a Brazilian that come in, we're like, oh man, this division's definitely going to die after Cejudo. Like, oh no, it's going to go. And then now you have the Mexican and Brandon Moreno, both of them just kind of going at it, literally prideful country versus prideful country.
Yeah, and
everyone is watching.
Brandon Moreno kind of has that Conor effect, right? Because he's bringing all of Mexico with him.
Well, see, I wouldn't even say he has that Conor effect. I think any fighter who's at their top level outside of the U.S., and I really mean that, outside of the U.S., everyone in their country is going to follow, because they're like, yeah, we want to beat the Americans. We want to do this. But when you have an American as a champion, we're like, yeah, man, we can't wait till DC loses. Man, we can't wait till John Jones loses. Oh, Alexander Gustafsson, it's like, what? That doesn't make sense. So for some reason, I've noticed ever since traveling internationally and being a huge boxing fan, which you see Ricky Hatton, all of the UK follow him. You see Tyson Fury, the same thing. You see Anthony Joshua, same thing.
A lot of patriotism, nationalism.
Manny Pacquiao. Literally, the crazy thing about Manny Pacquiao is every time he fights, there's almost 0% crime rate. Like, that's how much everyone stops and pays attention because they support the small guy in a big country. Americans don't care about Americans. It's literally just a competition, and that's the hard part. So when you have a Brazilian versus a Mexican, you have two huge countries, especially Mexico now really coming up in the MMA game. Alexa Grasso, Calvin Gastelum, Cejudo, all these guys, like, they're being super, super highlighted. And, with UFC having Brandon Moreno beat Figueiredo the second time, they're just like, man, we can bank on this. And now you have, again, Kaya de France that's been there this whole time. You have Pantoja, who's been there this whole time. You have Alex Perez, who's been there this whole time. All these guys who've been there this whole time, who were exciting throughout every single fight. But now we're getting promoted. So it's whatever the UFC wants to do. Me, I just re-signed the 5-fight deal with Brave. I have no intention of going back to the UFC unless they pay me really, really well and I get the respect I deserve.
Well, we'll circle back to all that. We got a little sidetracked to start off this show, but let's go back a little bit and tell people about your story. So you're from Chicago originally. I believe I've read that you started martial arts when you were 4. Your dad got you into it. How did that journey get started for you?
Well, my dad was, not the best role model growing up. He was a gang leader, all that stuff. And my brother was slowly following that path. So even though I love them both to death, they weren't the role models I needed in my life. And my brother being that role model of like, hey, man, I went left. Don't do that. You should go right. Kind of like that. And it's sadly to say, like that test child. And he was just like, hey, man.
Kind of like that Derrick Rose story. Derrick Rose, same thing. His brother kept him clean. They were like, no, you're going to go play basketball. And we're not letting you get in trouble.
And it was crazy because my dad wanted me to fight. My brother's like, you should go in the gym because it's going to keep you off the streets like I'm at. And then with my mom, she goes, I'm going to spend all my free time taking you everywhere. My mom took me, literally, I was like a 3-sport person a year. I was always in karate all year round. Then like football, baseball, basketball, wrestling, something. I was always in a sport in every season. So I was just always active. But karate was year round. And then 14, eventually joined wrestling. 16, joined Combat Do, where I'm still at today with my head trainer, Master Bob Shermer. And dude, I've been there for years. And the gym saved my life. It gave me a lot of positive male role models that I needed at that time.
Yeah, you hear that story a lot, especially when it comes to mixed martial arts. I did mixed martial arts throughout my childhood as well. And it gives you a discipline that you do get from football, you do get from other team sports. But martial arts is a little different because you're getting it on a personal level. You're getting it to not only learn how to protect yourself, but you're also learning how to control situations. You're learning how to control your life. And one thing I always learned from martial arts was, because I took Taekwondo, I took Hapkido, I boxed, I did a bunch of other stuff. I always should have probably wrestled. I never actually did. I was too busy playing football, baseball, and basketball. And our seasons kind of weren't as clear cut. I think I grew up in the DC area, so a little bit different. But I was always playing like one of the main sports. And then I was doing fighting on the side as like, training every day throughout my teenage years. And one thing I always brought to me, no matter where I go, because I grew up in a rough neighborhood, maybe not quite Chicago, but I grew up in a rough neighborhood, and you had to like know how to navigate those waters. And I think martial arts definitely gives you that good background to where you're not afraid, but you're also smart enough not to put yourself in bad situations. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I perceived it. When you were in high school, were you a successful wrestler? Did you wrestle at states or any of that stuff?
It's crazy to get back in your last statement. Like, and it's funny because eventually I want kids, but I want to give my kids everything I wish I would have known, not wish I would have had, because physical stuff. But the knowledge of, man, I kind of want them to grow up in the streets a little bit because that makes them tougher. Fighting's a poor man's sport. And like you said, growing up in certain neighborhoods, rougher neighborhoods, these guys,
my daughter has no idea.
Sometimes literally have no choice but to fight to live. Like, fighting's a poor man's sport. And that's their way out of the neighborhood. Sometimes they don't go to school, they don't go to college, they don't get a degree, they're not good at whatever jobs. Fighting's their last resort. And growing up in a hood, it honestly does make you a lot tougher. I think your skin's tougher. Maybe you're not emotionally balanced, but you're definitely swinging for the fences, and that's amazing. But I'm sorry, what was your question?
I was just saying, you mentioned wrestling in high school and stuff. Did you go through states? Did you do well in high school?
So I was a state qualifier my senior year, and it's funny because funny thing is, so two funny things. When I was a kid, all my friends after wrestling would join, or excuse me, after football would join wrestling. And they're like, hey, Shorty, come on, we want you to join too. I was like, all right, well, let me ask my dad. And back in, the early 2000s, late 90s, my dad was like, is that the one where they wear the tights? I was like, yeah. He goes, no, I don't want my kid doing that. I was just like, okay, Dad. And so I never did it because he was always kind of like, oh, he's wearing the tights, yada, yada, yada. So I'm like, all right, didn't do it. And then when I was 14, I was on my junior high school basketball team for 2 years. And we have the biggest junior high in the United States. It's a very good team. It's very hard to make it. And given I was like the last person to be on, sometimes even a manager just helping guys because the coach felt bad. But I tried out for my high school team, and the wrestling coach came up to me and goes, hey, son, where are you going? I was like, I'm going to try out for the basketball team. He goes, all right, well, when they cut you, I'll see you in the wrestling room. I was like,
That's
oh,
messed up.
all right, I'll take that bet. And surprisingly, I was the last person to be cut on my basketball team. And the coach literally came up to me. He goes, honestly, I like you. You're cool. I just don't think I'm going to use you because how tall you are. I was like, well, at least you're honest with me. I appreciate it.
Dare I ask how? Because
I
I know you're only like 5'4" now. How tall were you in high school?
I was probably like 5'1", maybe, maybe. And so I got cut or I got released, and I was like, all right, let me go to the wrestling team. That whole year I tried to be cut, and my coach never released me. Like I literally would show up late to weigh-in, show up late to wrestling meets, all this stuff. And I think it was the mentality because I'm an athlete. I was like, I'm not a quitter, but I don't mind if I get cut because that's, it gets out of my control. And he never cut me. And after that, my junior year, I missed it by 1 point to make it to state. And I was like, oh man, I got to really train. So that whole junior year when I graduated, off season was just training, got to my senior year. And, I became a state qualifier. I didn't do anything at state. Sadly, it was a piggyback tournament. So if you lost your first one, and if that guy lost his second one, then you were out. Yeah. So he lost, I was out, and it was what it was. But I was All-American in junior college, and then I wrestled Division II.
Nice. So when did you start doing your amateur MMA? When did you make that transition?
Right when I was 18. I was training at Combat Dome. We do everything, Muay Thai, MMA, kickboxing, boxing. Yeah. And we go to these tournaments that are specifically those styles to make you a well-rounded MMA fighter. And I won so many different tournaments. And by the time I was 18, he's like, hey, let's get you an MMA fight. Sadly, though, I showed up. My opponent didn't show up. It was at 125. I was a tiny kid before I really, developed my body. And they're like, hey, you still want to fight? I'm like, yeah, I sold tickets. I go, okay, cool. Well, the 35-pound champion, his opponent didn't show up. He's 5-0, 5 TKOs, first-round finishes, and this is his last amateur fight before it goes pro. You want to fight him? I'm a cocky 18-year-old that literally went to training maybe twice a week. And I was like, yeah, sure, I could take it. The first time I ever put on MMA gloves, I was going in there to fight. And I was just like, oh, man. At the same time, World Star
was this Jarrell Markel, or is this one that's
No, this was not listed in the record. This is Andre Feliciano. I think he went 5-0 as a professional and then retired. He's just like, man, this sport's getting hard. I had a bunch of injuries.
That's one thing I learned a long time ago. Tapology is missing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Tapology, I think, says I'm 11-0.
Something like that, 11 or 12-0.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably had like 20, 30 fights.
I was as amateur, so I ended up losing a split decision. At the same time, World Star was getting popular. So I was like, oh man, I might get knocked out in front of all my friends, yada, yada, yada. Be on World Star, somebody in the background, you're World Star. So I lost my split decision.
You did grow up in the hood.
Yeah, seriously. And I lost by split decision. It was what it was. Could have gone either way. And I think if I didn't lose that first one, I wouldn't have gone 25 straight. I went 25 straight undefeated. Then I went, I think, 8-0 undefeated until I finally lost my first UFC fight, my first professional fight. And then, I won one. Oh, excuse me, I had a draw, and then I won one after that. So it's been a process, man, but it's one hell of a journey.
So where along that journey, because I know you talk about Combat Dome, and then you talk about now being with Dean Thomas, who, is world famous. He had a successful career himself. Now a great coach, talking about people like Tyron Woodley and a whole bunch of other people he's been involved with. Mm-hmm. How did you get hooked up with him?
So when I traveled down to ATT, and this was all by accident, I was training with TJ Dillashaw in California. We went from Colorado to Anaheim, California. He just finished beating Cody Garbrandt the first time. And I'm thinking he's going to fly me back to fight Cody Garbrandt the second time. And I ended up finding out that he was having a baby. So I was like, okay, well, I know when he's out of the gym, all the small guys disappear. And as much as I love sparring with Cub Swanson, I'm like, you're kind of big for me. So I was like, okay, I need a place to
That might be the
train.
first time somebody called Cub big, but
Yeah, my manager, he's had kicked me so many times. I'm like, okay, I got to keep my hands up. But I ended up moving down to Florida because my manager lives right across the street from American Top Team. He has good connections with them. So he's like, here, how about you live here? You can train here and see if you like it. Do one camp. I'm like, awesome. It was the most convenient place because there were so many bodies and a number of like small guys, ridiculous. Like it's a heaven for small people. And I met Dean there. Given we never really connected, I was with Conan, all these other guys. And slowly, as my career started to slow down, they started to focus less on me. You know, they're like, oh, he's not a UFC fighter anymore. He's at Brave. We're going to focus on other people. And
yeah.
Dean really worked as like, he more preferred the outcast. Like, he's like, hey, you want to work? Then cool, we'll work. I'm not here to promote. I'm not here to do this. I just want to work. And I want to care about you. I want to invest in you. I started working more with all the small people, and the small people work with the women. And so Jillian and I became really close. We're working all the time. And she's Dean Thomas's like pupil, like main pupil. That's her protege, all that. And when we decided to all leave the gym, Dean's like, how about you just move in with me? And so we all lived together. We trained together. We traveled to Rufus Sport when Tyron Woodley was getting ready for Kamaru Usman. And man, the relationships built up a lot. Like Dean's not just helped me inside the cage, but even mentally with a lot of mental health outside the cage as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's been phenomenal. You hear him on broadcasts and stuff about just how, I mean, you talk about a guy that knows the sport inside and out. And like everything he says is going to happen in a fight on a broadcast. 9 times out of 10 pretty much happens. He knows his stuff. He's been involved. He's been a fighter. So you know when somebody like that, you know, it's like Rashad Evans getting ready to relaunch Black Zillions. You know you're going to learn from a UFC Hall of Famer, and that carries some weight. Whether you're a fan of his, whether you like that style, whether the school is right for you or the camp is right for you, that's a different story. But you know going in that the guy you're talking to, he's been in the fire, and he knows what he's talking about. So it's a different world sometimes when you get involved with that. Of course, South Florida, AT&T, Sanford, the Black Zillions coming back. You have a number of small teams. I'm in Tampa right now. You got Gracie South with Billy Q and all those guys. You got a number of things. I know you're doing some stuff in Orlando right now. We'll talk about your Flow grappling match coming up in just a little bit. But you're elevating. You turn pro in 2016. You go through Titan FC. You win multiple belts in different weight classes. And then you do get to the UFC. You get, you have that crazy knockout over Jared Brooks, the accidental slam, the reverse slam, the you landed right slam, however you want to call it. But you took advantage. You turned on him real quick and put him away. You didn't give him time to recover. So I don't call anything that happens in that cage an accident. But it has been labeled as many things. Then you go into Alex Perez. Now Alex Perez, he was on his own steamroll until he ran into Figueiredo. So going up the charts, you were 8-0 at the time. What happened in that fight that went wrong?
I was dealing with a lot of mental health issues that, man, I was depressed going in there. And UFC, the crazy thing was, so they gave me the Jared Brooks fight on a 9-day notice. They called me 10 times last minute in 10 days or less. The Jared Brooks fight, they gave me a 9-day notice. I'm like, you know what? I have no choice but to take this because they said they're not going to call me anymore after this. I'm like, all right, take the fight. They also gave me the ultimatum. If I missed weight, they're going to cut me no matter if I won or not. I'm like, all right, so there's no training camp for Jared Brooks. Given both Alex Perez and Jared Brooks, for whatever situation, they had to deny future fights with me or fights with me before this time with Jared Brooks. So I'm like, it is what it is because, I got called last minute.
Yeah.
So I fight Jared Brooks. I win, accidental knockout, whatever you want to call it. Sure. Hey, guys, I want to fight again. I want to kind of redeem myself, really show the fans what I'm truly made of, especially with my resume. Give me a full fight camp. I know I can help revitalize this flyweight division. Be, at the time, the Cody Garbrandt, but for the flyweights, the knockout artist. And they're like, this is about maybe late June, early July. They go, maybe, but I think we're going to put you at the back of the bench. You'll fight in December. I'm like, not what I want, but sure, because they're paying me crappy as well. So I'm like, man, I need to fight, but sure. All right, I'll fight in December. Now, 2 weeks go by. I'm eating like crap. I'm helping people in the gym, but I'm not in shape. I'm just kind of like, yeah, I'll be a body, whatever. Gosh, I'm exhausted. I'm dying over here. And I'm eating whatever I want. I'm being fat and happy. I'm natural Libra. And out of nowhere, they go, "Hey, we want you to fight Alex Perez." I was like, okay, well, I just took a last minute fight. What's the notice? They go 20 days. It's like, I don't know. They tried obviously bringing me in, like, hey, your friend TJ Dillashaw is the main event. He's fighting Cody Garbrandt second time. Come Swanson's down there, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, it would be nice to see everybody, but man, I just had a 20-day camp. They go, well, if you don't take this fight, you don't fight until next year. And next year does not mean January. And I'm like, well, dude, I I need money. Like, I need to get paid. Well, I kind of have no choice but to take this fight. Even if I lose, I'm going to make a paycheck. Yeah. That whole time was 20 days, 28 pounds. Now, is it double the time of Jared Brooks? Sure. But now I'm even more out of shape because I'm doing this yo-yo diet. Yeah. And now the weight cut, even though I had longer time, dude, I'm thinking I'm freaking dying on this weight cut. Now, the crazy thing is I get to 10 days out. California calls me. California goes, wait, we're red flagging you. You had this extreme weight cut already. You're cutting how much weight? No, we're not going to allow you to fight. 2 days later, they call me back and they're like, the UFC called us. They said you're good to go. I was like, I don't know what the UFC said to you to allow the whole California athletic, like,
just in case anybody at home is wondering how that works.
Yeah, I was like, okay, cool. I guess I'm fighting. I was still cutting weight and doing all whatever, and I'm just like, all right, gotta fight. I'm fighting at the Staples Center, which is dope, you know. And so I get there, I'm like, this is awesome, but man, and the closer you get to weight, and I don't know if you've ever been through a weight cut, but the closer you get to weight, the more this starts to just break down on you, and you don't care anymore. This, that, and I was already facing so many outside issues that I was just like, man, I don't want to do any of this. And fight week, Monday shows up. My fight is Saturday. I already had that mindset. No matter what happens in the cage, I just want to go home. I just want to go in there, do my job, go home. I didn't even care about winning. I didn't even care about losing. In my head, I'm like, I'll go 3-1 in the UFC. I do not care. Go in there. Sadly, it just didn't work in my favor. First ever TKO my entire life. It is what it is. Could I have won on a better day? Maybe. Could I have still the same outcome happen? Maybe. But maybe it was meant to be that way. I lose. So be it. They go, okay, cool. You'll fight sometime, maybe December. Thank you for taking that last minute fight. Cool, guys. Yeah, appreciate it. You know, it is what it is. Then I start making mental health videos because the UFC is treating me really bad. Now I can't talk to McMaynard. I can't talk to my matchmakers, whomever. And I start going through more mental health issues. So I start my own YouTube series, start doing this. Then I see DJ get traded. And I'm like, what the hell happened? Like, this is our best champion. This is the best champion in UFC's history, not just for the flyweights. And you're going to just trade him like that. His history fight has always been a co-main event. Why? You know, every single title fight he's had, the longest reigning champ, is always a co-main event. Why? And so when he got released,
or a main event on Fox forever too.
Yeah, and so he got released, and I'm just kind of like, oh man, that's not a good sign. Like, Dana White was already kind of conning him and trolling him because he's like,
DJ wanted out. DJ wanted out for a while.
He's like, if you don't fight TJ, you're going to be we're going to cut the whole weight class. We're not going to cut you. We're going to cut the whole weight class. Dude, you know how much of a threat that is? Like, when he says, hey, John Jones, if you don't want to fight this guy, we're just going to cut you or we're going to hold you. He doesn't say we're going to cut the whole lightweight division or light heavyweight division. Yeah. So he was, you know, showed how much disrespect he had for the small guys. And so when he traded him for Ben Askren, a guy I guess he clearly didn't like, but I guess secretly did, hires him, I'm like, oh, dude, that's a bad sign. Calling my manager, doing all this. I was like, you know what? Let me make a video. Let me see. Just kind of explain my thoughts, more venting. I just ended up being spot on. And we call McMaynard. McMaynard's like, no, we're not cutting the flyweight division. Next week, he's like, yeah, you know what? We are going to cut the flyweight division. The following day, they're like, hey, we don't want you. I was like, well, how about let me bump up to 35? Half my wins at the time were at 135. And they're like, no, you won by a lucky knockout your first one, and you look like crap the second fight. So now we're good. And I was like, well, man, you didn't give me any, okay. You didn't give me any time to train or really get ready for fights, but sure. But so I got released and extremely belittled and mistreated, which had more mental health issues after that. And it took me a while to, like, even and now at this point.
Of course, we kind of like not forgot to mention, but we also, you know, should mention that in that year prior, you also lost your father as well.
Mm-hmm. So the three things that I had that I was going through, I was losing my engagement at the time of the Alex Perez fight. I was about 7 years into my relationship, into my engagement, planning to get married, planning on having kids. The relationship was just kind of slowly going downhill. And so I had that to deal with and other stuff, which, again, life. It's just stuff to deal with. And so I didn't know how to deal with pretty much a bad breakup. And then I got released from the UFC, which I worked my entire life to get to. Had all these accolades, more than anyone's had entering the UFC at the time.
You were very, very well known on the regional circuit, especially.
And then I get released like that because I was a small guy. If I was any other weight class, it'd been different. But I was a small guy, so I got released. And then the year after that, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to fight anymore, but I'm still going to do it. I'm going to try. This is my whole life to work for. Get to Brave, kind of have like a performance against Amir Albazi. I beat him. And then after that, I got called for a world title fight. Everything's good. And then my father dies. Dude, I grew up in the hood, and that's why I say about emotional health. Like, I grew up in the hood. No man teaches you how to cry. No man teaches you how to vent. Hey, man, suck it up.
A lot of us, myself included, didn't even have a man in our lives. We had to learn a lot of shit on our own. So
yeah. So that was the fact that, like, even in the gym, all the male role models were hard asses. They're, all military guys. They're all this, that. And it's like, man, I don't know how to vent. I don't know how to express my emotions. I don't know how to tell people what I need, So I went through a lot of stuff to where literally I know subconsciously I was actually trying to commit suicide multiple times, So now to the point, given things just haven't worked out with weight cuts and just life in general, but I'm like, man, I just want to fight because I know I can prove myself. I think mentally here I finally become the best person I want to be. And I feel being the best me can be one of the best in the world. And I think that's amazing. And
also I'm sure fighting is also kind of like, I don't want to call it your happy place, but it's where you feel the most comfortable. Like you get in that cage with somebody else across from you, and it's where you can just be free, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have to worry about anything going on outside that cage. Once that door closes, it's just you and him, and then everything else doesn't matter. And I think that's when you see some of the best performances from people, that when they have the ability to just kind of like let themselves go. Mm-hmm. And so many people, not just yourself, everybody has certain baggage, but when a fighter can't like focus in that cage, they're in trouble. They're dangerous. Like if you're not 100% committed in that cage, you're going to lose, and sometimes very badly. So you lost to Alex Perez. Like you said, you go to Brave, which could have been one of the best career moves. Personally, we talked about it off air. I interviewed Alex Soto a long time ago when Brave was starting. Him, Sheik, Khalid, also Muhammad, the Hawk, Shahid, like all those guys starting up Brave. And I was like interviewing all those guys when they were getting ready to start this whole thing out of Bahrain MMA and everything. And it was just like Alex says, it was just a little small, like little hallway you go down, and then here you go into this room, and then there's Khabib and all these Dagestani guys wrestling, and he brought Frankie Edgar over, and they were like teaching him English and doing all this other stuff. And now you look at Brave, I guess now 5 or 6 years later, 7 years later, and it's a big deal in the Middle East. It's a big deal when it comes to mixed martial arts. They've grown this thing tremendously. They have, television deals, and they have all this stuff. So you're seen worldwide, not just in America. Mm-hmm. You're seen worldwide. Now, I have to ask you, because we're also good friends with Shorty Rock. I've interviewed Sean Santella a number of times, had him on Art of MMA. The first time you guys fought, it was a draw, majority draw, a battle of different styles, right? It was his jiu-jitsu versus your striking and wrestling, and we got a draw. Now, fast forward, everybody's been screaming for this rematch. You guys have been scheduled to be rematched a couple of times. The first time, I would think it was March 25th, right? You wanted to do it in April because your camp wasn't ready. You didn't have Dean Thomas the first time. Second time, you were like, Dean Thomas was wrapped up in a whole bunch of other things going on that weekend. You were like, let's push it back to April. I'll have my whole camp. I'll have my whole team. But that didn't happen. You take the fight in March, then Sean breaks his hand or his wrist or something like that. So he's out. You take another opponent. You fight Blaine Driscoll, get the win decision. I know last November you had a fight canceled, and then Sean took that fight and lost very quickly. So now both you guys, I believe, are out of the tournament. Mm-hmm. And also, I know you're kind of getting tired of going down to that weight limit. What is the future? Will we ever see that rematch?
I mean, if he wants to bump up, I'm more than happy to. I have, again, him and I, we have nothing against each other. It's kind of crazy that when him and I fought the first time,
and he speaks very highly of you too. So
he's a great guy. We both had mental issues where he was dealing with traumas with his mother, her health. I think at the same time the dog was having health issues. I was like, man, you're taking care of everybody at the time. My father passed away. We both haven't fought in a year and a half, and so we were just kind of like, Let's go in there and have fun. And I think both of us didn't show up that day to where like after we're like, damn it, we both could have done more, and we put too much pressure on ourselves. And then with the November fight, man, it's crazy because I trained out in Dagestan, and Dagestan was like the best worst camp. The reason why I say that is because Dagestan, I was out there for a month. Best camp. Like, their wrestling is phenomenal. The guys, like, they're all hardworking. The way boxers live here in the States is how MMA fighters live there in Dagestan. Like, that's their life. And
like Alex says, there's wrestling and then there's Dagestani wrestling.
Oh, dude,
it's totally different.
I honestly, one of the days I was just getting toyed with, and I knew I'm an All-American, so it's like I know when somebody's superior and I know when somebody's toying with me. And this guy, there was two guys toying with me, and after they're like, Shorty, how did you do? I was like, man, that guy's good. He's striker. I was like, he's a striker? That's it. I'm just like taking off myself like that. I'm good. He wins. He can just have my whatever my future is, he can have it. But I was like, if you consider this guy his strikeout out of everyone, I don't even care. But yeah, man, I had a good time out there, and it was awesome. It was Rocky IV. The only problem was the weight cut. When you go to a country that you literally don't speak any of their dialect and practically no one there speaks English, you get nothing out of it. I was like, man, the training's awesome, the camaraderie's awesome, but it was hard to find a sauna, which the banyas over there are ridiculous. It was too hot. Like, I'd had to sit on the floor. I thought I was going to pass out every time. Like, their mental strength is ridiculous when it comes to the banyas. But, man, I was like, all right, cool, I need a diet. They would make me food, and it was steak, rice, and potatoes. And I'm like, this is exactly the opposite I'm supposed to have.
You can eat the steak. You can't eat any of the rest.
Dude, I was eating, I had no choice but to eat all of it because I couldn't order my own food to a certain extent. I'm like, damn. So when I got close to the fight, little do people know, a month out, I cracked my rib. So I flew out to Dagestan with the cracked rib, was still wrestling, still doing whatever. And then 3 weeks before the fight, I ended up tearing my LCL. Given it wasn't a complete tear, I believe it was a grade 2. And I'm like, man, I can't even walk without a limp, so I can't drill. This is 3 weeks before the fight. Now, I've already done my whole camp. I'm spending all this money. I'm doing, great things. I want to fight. I want to fight Ali. That's a history-making fight for me. That's a guy I idolize. And so I end up still taking the fight. 3 weeks before the fight, I'm like, you know what? I got to start cutting weight. I can't do anything else. I got to work out. Sadly, because I started cutting weight early, I ended up drying out early. So a few days before the fight, a doctor comes into my room, and they're like, man, you're looking skinny. How close are you? I was like, hey, I'm still like 133, and I'm pretty dry. Like, every time I jump into a sauna, I'm not sweating anymore. So they check my body fat. And they're like, dude, you're like 5% body fat. You have how much? 7 pounds still to go? No, we're not going to clear you to do this. And so I talked to my team. I was like, yeah, but the doctors don't recommend me do this. And so I didn't fight.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because that would have been a pretty damn good fight.
I would love to fight Ali. He was super respectful after. It is what it is, and I'm glad Shorty got to take the fight. I know, obviously, it was a controversy with the 10-8 round, yada, yada, yada. So I'm like, cool, man. I know it's last minute, no training camp, but you got this. Ali was just superior that day. It is what it is. But for me, man, I'm thick. I'm a thick boy, 2 C's. So trying to get down to 25 is I spend about almost a full 2 weeks cutting weight when I could use that week before training and really drilling and doing this. So I think cutting down to 35 will keep me more active. And I've had one fight in 3 years, 1-1-1. So I wanna fight and be productive. I think 35 is gonna allow me to do that.
You are the Francis Ngannou of the Bantamweights.
Yeah, I'm a big boy, man.
Like one fight each year. I just remember Ngannou saying that. They're like, Ngannou, they were like, so you're not going to fight the rest of the year? He's like, what? They've scheduled me one fight each year. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I want to be active. Can't schedule myself, It's crazy sometimes, but I think Brave's really one of those places that really does appreciate the lighter weight divisions. And it's kind of like we talked about Mexican off air. We talked about Mexican MMA and stuff like that. Same thing. Like, those lighter weight divisions are thriving in international countries because they don't really have too many of the big boys outside of like Russia, maybe China, but a lot of the big boys are already in the UFC. They're already made that transition, UFC, PFL, Bellator, so on and so forth. But companies like companies like Brave, they're really emphasizing these lighter divisions. Even Demetrius Johnson, who lost his last fight, sat there and propped his opponent up on a pedestal. Like, he's like, this is what it's all about. I want competition. I want this excitement. And this is why I came here, because I can now get it. I don't know what the future holds for the UFC flyweight division. I do know Brandon Moreno is bringing a lot of eyes to the prize, so it's good for them. It's putting more money in everybody's pocket. We're probably going to see a fourth fight now because you can argue that Figueiredo won the first fight if it wasn't for that point deduction. Moreno clearly won the second fight. Third fight was very controversial. I actually, even though I did on air pick Figueiredo to win, I actually thought Moreno won the fight. So there's that. So they got to fight a fourth time, and the more they fight, the more money keeps piling up. So good for all of them. I know you and everybody else you're prize fighters. You want everybody to make some money. You already talked about how the UFC didn't pay you properly the first time, which I'm only guessing is probably the 12 to show and 12 to win.
It's pretty much in that ballpark.
Yeah, and even nowadays they're kind of, and I would love to get your thoughts on this. They have, because now you're on the outside, you don't have to like worry about what they care about what you say. They got the deal with Venom now, which is a little better than the Reebok deal for the kids. But evidently, this crypto deal, fighters don't get a penny from that. Is that true?
Yeah. So I don't know the crypto deal. I'm not in the UFC anymore, so I can't really speak 100% on that. But at least when I was signed with the Reebok, yeah, you make a small little purse out of it, which you're like, oh, hey, that's nice. But you look at Brendan Schaub when he eventually left the UFC. He goes, dude, I was making almost $120,000 out of sponsorships alone. And now you're going to give me $3,000 after my fight? That makes no sense. Even if you were a veteran who've had 20 fights, I think at the time you're making $15,000. You can get that from one sponsor. Obviously if you're up there.
Big name,
So that's something I do enjoy about Brave. Brave one does pay attention to the small guys. They pay attention. This is two things I really enjoy about Brave. The one, they highlight every fighter. Doesn't matter if you're first in the fight. Doesn't matter if you're last in the fight. They're really trying to bring up every single guy. And then two, they don't just go to countries that are really kind of not paid attention to, but they also go to the cities, the small cities, and go, hey, you have highlighted fighters. We want to highlight them and give everyone an equal share of opportunity to come on up. I mean, you look at Manny Pacquiao. No one knew where he was from. No one even knew about the Philippines. You look at Triple G. Who cared about Kazakhstan? And now everyone's like, Kazakhstan has great boxers. Look at Lomachenko. Yeah. No one paid attention to Ukraine. So it's just the crazy things where you go to little places, you find gems. And that's what Brave is doing. And I think that's awesome. But man, when it comes to these marketing deals, all the sponsorships that the UFC gets is what the UFC gets. We get none of that. And I believe there was a post that, and I've shared it years ago, but I know recently it's kind of slowly increased to where at the time when I shared it, I think this was 5 years ago when I got signed, UFC was giving 16% of their revenue to the fighters.
I think it's now up to 19%. In 2021, it was up to 19%. And
Bellator does 44 or something like that. And it's like, dude, this is why everyone's transitioning over. Look at Paige Ann's aunt. She made more money in one fight in BKFC than she did her entire UFC career. She, what's his name? Anderson. And Bellator was like, dude, I made more money in one fight in Bellator than I made in my entire UFC career. And it's like, one fight, that's what we deserve. Compared to Francis Ngannou.
Look at Tyron Woodley. He went over and boxed Jake Paul in 2 fights, made more than his whole career.
Yeah, and as much as, and trust me, I bash him every once in a while because I'm like, oh man, the second fight, you probably shouldn't have done that, yada, yada. This is before even he got knocked out. But it is what it is. Money's money. I don't have a family. I don't have kids. I don't know his needs, but it's the fact of,
I think there was a large part of Tyron that wanted revenge too.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it's the fact of this sport doesn't last forever. I know as an MMA fighter now, you have to love the sport to do it. Everyone wants to be Conor McGregor, but no one is ever really Conor McGregor. Maybe one day there's another person, but right now there's not.
Probably somebody.
Francis Ngannou should be easily the highest paid fighter in the world right now in MMA. But he's making $600,000 a fight when I believe Kamaru Usman made $1 million. I think Mazarl made $1 million.
In fairness, Ngannou's gotten to the point where he's so fed up he just wants out because he's turned down, like I think he said on Ariel Helwani that he turned down up to like $7 million. He could have fought for like $7 million this fight, but he wanted his contract to run out. He's at the point where he felt so disrespected by everything that's happened over the last year. He kind of wants to see what it looks like to be free. And that's the thing I don't think a lot of people realize. And you talked about a little bit earlier about how you felt disrespected. Dana and them have every right to treat their business as a business. And promoters are going to promote their self-interest first and foremost. You can choose to fight for the UFC, or you can choose to go to a PFL and chase $1 million prize. It's really on what your priorities are. A lot of people think Kayla Harrison might just stay in the PFL for another year, take her $1 million or a good chance at $1 million and keep enjoying her life and her quality of life. There's a lot to go with the UFC. Yeah, you get marketability. You can always go around from now on. Jose Shorty Torres will always be known as somebody who fought in the UFC. Win or lose, you know that he was a UFC fighter. That does carry weight, especially when you're negotiating with a Brave or negotiating with a One or somebody else. But there's also a quality of life, and there's so many UFC fighters that come back, especially if they're not in the top tier of fighters or haven't made it there yet and they're still trying to prove themselves, have 1 or 2 fights and then you never hear from them again. That will tell you it's not all it's cracked up to be. And if you have the opportunity to get big in the UFC, yeah, of course, your life is made forever. But that's a long road. You look at Charles Oliveira. How long did it take him to go from different divisions into the lightweight division to now be champion? That was a long trip. And
broken records, and no one paid him anyways.
Yeah. And you at only 29 you're still in your prime. Like, especially, with some of the guys you're fighting or some of the top in the world that people might not even know they heard of, but people that know MMA know they are. So we'll talk about your Flow grappling in a second, but what's next for you in Brave? Like, have they talked about any fights coming up? Because you really haven't fought since March of last year.
Yeah, I know, and I'm trying to get another fight in March in their upcoming events, the World Championships, Brave International Fight Week. Still negotiating for that, still trying to find the fighter, still trying to kind of squeeze my way in because I know the card is full, but we'll see. Brave has their agenda, and, if I'm not in it, then it sadly is what it is, and hopefully I'm on the next card. But like you said, I'm 29. I'm in my prime. I've wasted a lot of time, sadly, with a lot of things. At least the last one was definitely just out of my control. Yeah. But this one, it's like, man, I just want to fight. And given COVID, obviously, it hasn't helped traveling internationally, being an American. Yeah. Countries that want Americans right now, we have the highest COVID rate, but it gets difficult. So trying to fight in March, but we'll see what happens next. But real quick to go back on because you can tell this obviously touches a button for me with the UFC fighters. You look at Mazarl. How long did it take Mazarl to finally start making millions of dollars in the UFC? He had the Ben Askren knockout, which was awesome. I think he beat Cerrone, got to fight Ben Askren, and he got that knockout. Now he's a superstar. He
had to create a gimmick.
Yeah, well, look at Colby Covington. Colby Covington is the prime example of creating a gimmick. Yep. Look at Cejudo, Triple C. He created a gimmick. Now everyone respects him because he's retired and he's coaching all these fighters. Like, that's awesome. Good for him. But Dana
needs to give him a fight because he's itching to come back.
Yeah. Well, he's also so young. He's still in his prime. He's ready to go, and he's still in shape. Round is in shape, but still, it's the fact of. I mean,
he's still training some of the best in the world. He's trained Figueiredo. He's trained with John Jones and all those guys. He's still involved heavily.
Yeah. So, all these guys have to do all these things. I mean, again, with Mazarl, he was outspoken on Twitter saying we're independent contractors, but we can't fight anywhere else, but you can cut us whenever we want, or you want to, and you sign us to a deal. And then he had to be so outspoken that finally he got paid to take the last minute fight against Kamaru. Like, he stood his ground. Did it help any other fighters? Maybe. I don't think so. He got what he got, and good for him. I'm happy for him. That's awesome. But man, it's tough in this sport, and that's why Sergio Pettis leaving the Bellator, making the most money he's ever made. Anthony Pettis going to the PFL now. People are like, oh, they're fighting for $1 million. Yeah, but every fight they fight to get to that $1 million point, they still have show money, and they get win money. So, I mean, I don't know what Kayla Harris is making, but she can be making $200,000 per fight, and then finally, after maybe 5 fights, fight for this $1 million, and then make $3 million once the season's over. Like, that's why people go to the PFL. That's why people go to Bellator, because UFC, sadly, is the biggest promotion in the world, but it does not mean it's the best. And because then that's also why they're getting sued for being a monopoly. So, and that's been going on for years.
That's where I was going with that. We interviewed Kung Lee on the second episode of Unfiltered. People can go back. I'll put the link in the show notes if they want. And you talk about that. You roll into now the 2017 lawsuit. The money has come up. Like, that's where the 19% comes from, because people have been tracking it, how much the fighters getting paid. The NBA pays their athletes 51% of their revenue. Most sports pay around there. Like the NFL was like 50-50, Major League Baseball, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about $1 billion company, especially since they went public with Endeavor and all that stuff. Now, are they going to look out for the bottom line? They are. And for better or worse, Dana White and crew follow the Vince McMahon strategy of WWE. Same thing with independent contractors. If they cut somebody, they can't work for anybody for 90 days. But at the same time, you can't go to work either. Like, you're cut. They'll pay you, but you're benched because they hope people forget about you. So when you re-debut, nobody cares about you. That's where that comes from. And Dana White and them copy that. Same thing. You're an independent contractor. You fight, you win, you keep winning. But I've also seen people win and then never be heard from again either. It really depends if you're one of their favorites, if the politics go your way, or you just have a cult following in the world that they just can't ignore because they know that equals dollar signs. But sadly, a lot of those dollar signs aren't going in your pockets.
Yeah, and it's going in somebody else's pocket. And I feel like I'm being pimped out. And I was like, hey, man, where's my cut? You know, like, I should be making majority. If not, worse comes to worse, you're a big promotion. Let's do half and half. But, you know, and that's why boxing, I believe boxing, they do a 60-40 where it's like 60 goes to the fighters because we know without you guys, this show wouldn't happen. You know, and that's why boxing, Tyson Fury making $30 million his last fight compared to Ngannou making, you know, a little more than $500,000. So that's the big difference. And that's why I'm excited to see Ngannou keeping his gigantic foot down and possibly moving over to boxing because that's the money he deserves. Whether he's going to be good at it or not, that's the money he deserves.
And I know people at home will talk about the fact that he's probably going to be out the year anyway because of the knee injury. So that's a whole different issue. But they sat there and had an interim title fight literally like 4 months after he won the belt or 5 months after he won the belt. And they let Dominic Cruz sit on the shelf for like 3 years. So it's really if you're a favorite or not. And, you know, Dana is going to play the cards he wants to play. But back with you. So you said you signed a new 5-year deal with Brave. Have they made any kind? I know travel restrictions are probably why you're not there right now, but have they made any kind of like predictions of how many fights they're trying to get you per year once things kind of pick back up?
I mean, nothing as of yet. You know, they don't want to give me false promises because, again, COVID can come back. You know, especially overseas. Again, the Omicron, the Delta, what all these damn different names coming up. Like whole countries over there have shut down. You know, so they're not as I don't know how to give the proper word, but I mean, in the States, you have some states that are like, no, man, you can't do this, can't do that. You need to be vaccinated. You can't go in any building. And then Florida and Texas is like, what's COVID? They're like, I have no clue what this is. You know,
in fairness, it also depends on what county you live in Florida too, because I live in Hillsborough and it's a little, it's not wide open. It's open way more than anywhere like back in DC where I'm from. It's definitely way more open than that. But there are a few like cautious restrictions. Miami, there's a few cautious restrictions, but for the most part, Florida and Texas are just like back to business.
Like I live in Chicago, so anytime I leave Florida and go back home to my mother and my family, I'm like, oh damn, I need a mask. Damn, I didn't bring one. I'm not used to this. This is different for me. So living in Florida and Texas has been awesome, but going back to this, I guess the regular states, if you want to say, is different. So I'm hoping Brave gets me as many fights as possible. But until then, we'll see. It's just, you know, it's out of my control when it comes to one, Brave and what they want from their fighters right now. And then two, with just COVID in the world.
I know a lot of promotions, especially like internationally, like one did it with a few of their fighters. PFL did it when they were shut down for a little bit in 2020 and let their fighters kind of take fights elsewhere to make a living. Is Brave allowing you to, like, if you wanted to take like a fight on a regional somewhere around here, not UFC probably, but if you wanted to take a fight in like PFL or Bellator or even a regional like Titan or somewhere, go back to your roots and make a little bit of extra money, would they let you do that?
See, I don't know. I haven't asked that, but that's also because Brave does pay me very well that if I go in the regional scene, it probably wouldn't even be worth it. You know, and if I decide to go to Bellator because
do they pay you when you're not fighting or just pay you to
No. I mean, in every promotion, they only pay you when you do fight. From what I know, I could be wrong, but unless I missed out the deal here, everyone only gets paid when they fight and they get paid extra when they win. But if I wanted to, in a sense, talk to Bellator and PFL, I believe that would be a conflict of interest. And then also because I'm a bigger name, not just an up and comer now, technically, which is kind of crazy to say being 29, is I'm a veteran in the sport. So these guys, maybe let's say I beat one of their highlighted guys. Then they're like, hey, we want to keep you. And now they're trying to negotiate a deal when I'm already signed to somebody else. So I don't believe that would be a possibility. And again, Bred pays me and treats me really well. So I'm happy where I'm at. I just wish I could fight more. It's just COVID. Nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, we keep, praying every day that things open up and we kind of go back to our normal lives. I don't know what normal will ever look like again. Every time we think we're about to get normal, Omicron, something else pops up. I just caught it a few weeks ago, so it's going around like crazy. Thankfully, I'm, fully vaccinated. I have to get it that badly, but even me fully vaccinated has side effects still. So it's definitely something to be safe, be healthy, take care of yourself, take care of your family. But travel is like crazy. I've heard kickboxers that want to hop on that Glory 80 card can't do it because they are not getting travel plans approved to go to Europe and go to through different countries. So it's not just MMA. It's all combat sports, and it's kind of one of those things we kind of take for granted because we do have such a wealth of talent here in the United States that people don't have to travel outside the country. Like there's enough talent here. But when you fight, like, because DJ's been basically, he was benched for a long time, him and Eddie Alvarez, until things kind of opened up over there for a little bit last year. And now the whole thing with Rodtang might be pushed back. There's so many things that travel is just crazy for anybody. So hopefully they get you a fight soon. But before I let you get out of here, you do have something going on this weekend. You're going to be doing Flow Grappling for their 145-pound title. Tell us about that.
Yeah, man. So I did a fight to win not too long ago, and was able to do really well on that. And luckily, it's crazy. Again, I've been doing jiu-jitsu since I was 16, and I've never competed in a tournament because at the time the only tournaments around in my neighborhood was Naga, but Naga cost like $150 at the time just to sign up, and that wasn't even promising you or guaranteeing you a match at your weight class. You might have to bump up. Maybe no one showed up, so you're just like, oh, I really just paid for the belt and silverware or the sword if you got to that place. So I'm like, oh, well, damn, I never want to do this. So I just ended up working for Naga, never competed. I always trained, never competed. And my teammate, Jillian, just goes to fight to win, goes for high rollers.
Robertson.
Yeah, she does all these tournaments. And I'm like, sub underground. I'm like, hey, man, homie, you want to hook me up? Like, you want to hook me up with these people and see if I can get connects? No? Where are you going? And would just ignore me. So I had to go out of my way and start hitting up other people. But because of her, I saw her getting the opportunity of getting paid at different things. I'm like, damn, man, you're making weight, you're staying active, you are training harder because you don't want to lose. We're all competitors. And so I did the fight to win. It was an awesome experience. Again, more anxiety in front of a crowd, more training with that. Now this one against another guy, a black belt, owns his own academy. I believe somewhere in Florida, if not Georgia. And it's just a fun experience, man. It's submission only, so it's pretty much EBI rules. And I also get to cut weight for it. I didn't know I'd have to cut weight for 145, but that's how much I guess I'm living my life. But yeah, man, it keeps me in shape and it keeps me motivated. And it's something I've been wanting to do. And plus, it just puts me in a whole different realm. And I think the best thing about it is I'm not a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I don't do just jiu-jitsu. I'm not Gordon Ryan. I'm not all Dan, whatever, Danaher, all these guys. Yeah. I'm an MMA fighter. So if I lose, I get tapped out. I don't have to fight these submissions and be like, oh, I'm not going to go. It's like, oh man, you got me. Like, cool. There's no anxiety. There's no pressure. And it's just fun and games. It's just really, yeah, good job. Really high level guys. And I'm going to go get a burger after it. So it's awesome.
Yeah. Have you thought, and it's also a great way, like you said, to get paid, stay active, not have to worry about the travel stuff. And then you got something like Fury Grappling, which is bringing in a lot of professional MMA fighters to kind of boost up their grappling guys. So that's another option right there. So many options.
If any guys want to contact me, message me on Instagram. My email's on there as well. And seriously, I'm literally trying to compete as much as possible. If I'm around, I'm a person, if I can, I will. And especially with competition, who doesn't want to roll against some of the best? Even if it's way out of my league, I just want to have fun and do my thing and have a good time. And I train with black belts all the time. This is what I do, and it's just a good experience. And it also gets me more comfortable just in case as an MMA fighter, if I do get stuck on my back, if I do end up on the ground and I know I'm facing a Charles Oliveira, I know I'm facing a Hani Yahya and all these guys. So
It's just gonna make
it
you a
helps
tougher
better
fighter.
prepare me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's gonna make you more well-rounded, which makes you more dangerous, which is always a good thing in a sport. You know, I always say if you're not learning, then you're in the wrong sport, because MMA, you learn more from your losses than you do your wins. And if you don't take something from a setback, then you might as well just get out of the sport, because I know 55-year-old fighters. Hell, Herschel Walker stepped into the damn cage at like 50, 51. Like, people are still evolving. They're still learning, and they love it every day. So definitely something better, man. We hope you get a fight, though, back in that cage soon, because you're always exciting. I appreciate you taking the time today. Make sure you follow Shorty. We'll put all the links in the show notes. You can follow all the stuff. He has some awesome training videos. We're talking about putting some of those on Fighters First for you guys at home to check out. He's also talking about many more projects that he's doing. So when that comes, we'll make sure we let you know. But for that said, man, Shorty, I appreciate you taking the time. Looking forward to you stepping back in the cage, and thank you.
I appreciate you, man. It was a pleasure, and I can't wait till next time.
All right, folks, make sure you follow Fighters First. Check out fightersfirst.shop. Get all our latest merch. We appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time. This is Unfiltered, and we're out.